This is Chapter 6, A New Industrial Age. The late 19th century America experienced an industrial boom. The first section is the expansion of industry. Please take a second and look at your study guide. Question number 1 is asking what 3 factors led to enormous growth. Please read along with me on the slide. After 1865, which is the Civil War, ended, the U.S. was still largely agricultural. By 1920, the U.S. was the leading industrial power in the world. What factors led to that? The 3 in red here, natural resources, government support, and urbanization, led to the enormous growth in the United States. Please take a minute and write down those 3 factors under question number 1 on your study guide. As always, please remember, pause if you need to. Slide number 2 talks about black gold. And on the left here, you see a picture. You see the date 1859. This individual right here is Edwin Drake. Okay? And read along with me. In 1859, Edwin Drake used a steam engine to drill for oil. This breakthrough started an oil boom in the Midwest and later in Texas. Question number 2 is asking, who is Edwin Drake? He is the person who developed the drill for oil and created an oil boom. Please write that down for question number 2. What I always find out interesting about the oil boom in the very beginning here is if you read right here, the process was used to transform oil into kerosene. They actually threw away the gasoline at one point until we started using it for cars. So in the beginning, they kind of just threw it away, which is an interesting fact. Number 3 is asking us, describe the Bessemer steel process. That's on the next slide right here. Oil was not the only valuable natural resource. Coal and iron were plentiful in the United States. When you remove the carbon from iron, the result was a lighter, more flexible, and rust-resistant compound, steel. And this is the Bessemer process. So please just write down that carbon was taken from iron to create steel. Carbon taken from iron to create steel. Question number 4 is asking, what are 2 new uses for this steel that we developed? If you take a look on this slide, you see right here in the picture on the left, a bridge. This is one of the uses that we came with steel. Railroads with thousands of miles of track were the biggest customers of steel. You can also write down for number 4, bridges, railroad tracks, other things that came out of this. Barbed wire, farm equipment, skyscrapers. Write down 2 of those for number 4, please. Question number 5 is, describe how new inventions spur industrial growth and explain the impact they had on jobs. So the next few slides, we'll start looking at some of the new industries. Electricity. So you can write down that for number 5. And what did that do for jobs? It allowed us to work at night. It gave us lights in our home. Powered numerous machines. Another invention is the typewriter. And if you look, this is our first version of what a keyboard is that you would be using today on a computer. Take a look what happened. Women made up less than 5% of the workforce. After the invention of the typewriter, 40% of women made up the workforce in offices using the typewriter. the telephone is invented at this time. And we all can come up with how that affected us in our industry. Okay, section number 2 we're going to look at here are the railroads. Again, it was mentioned before that they had they were big consumers of steel. Question number 6 is asking, explain what issue occurred when railroads were left unchecked. The growth and consolidation of the railroad industry influenced many facets of American life. However, the unchecked power of the railroad led to widespread abuses and then reforms. So number 6, please write down what you see in red. The power of the railroad led to widespread abuses. Number 7 is asking, what role did immigrants play in the railroad? A national network. By 1869, tracks had been laid across the continent, and the Golden Spike is in Utah. And in red here, immigrants from China and Ireland and out-of-work Civil War vets provided most of the difficult labor. So number 7 is you can write down immigrants provided the difficult labor in order to lay the railroad tracks. Number 8 is asking you, explain the effect of railroads had on time. Before 1883, each community still operated on its own time. For example, noon in Boston would have been 12 minutes later than noon in New York City. Indiana had dozens of different times. At this point, there was no standard time. For number 8, you can write down the fact that A, railroads created a standard time, and it created different time zones. The different time zones were created in 1869. Dowd here proposed dividing the Earth into 24 time zones. And the U.S. is divided into 4 of them: Eastern, Central, Mountain, and Pacific. Now, because of the railroads, all the watches and clocks had to be synchronized, or they all had to say the same time. And this is how the Earth is broken up into different time zones. Again, we're in the Eastern Standard Time Zone right here in purple, but if you lived in California, you would be in the yellow time zone. And bonus points, if you can write down next to number 8, what is the difference between Eastern Time and Western Time? Write down what is the difference in time. Here's another picture of it. As I said, New York is in yellow. We are considered Eastern Standard Time. What time would it be in California if it was 9 a.m. in New York? Go ahead and write that down for bonus points. So the railroad didn't just have an influence on time. It actually spurred other industries. Question number 9 is asking, explain how railroads affected industries and the growth of cities. The rapid growth of the railroad industry influenced the iron, coal, steel, lumber, and glass businesses as they tried to keep up with the railroad's demands for materials. So write that down for number 9. The spread of railroads led to growth. In addition to number 9, write down railroads led to the growth of cities. Again, pause if you need to. Many of today's major cities owe their legacy to the railroad. Chicago, Minneapolis, Denver, Seattle, they all grew up thanks to the railroad. So here is how many railroads our nation had by 1890. Pretty extensive up here in the Northeast and Central down in the South. Number 10 is asking, who is George Pullman and what caused the strike in 1894? Pullman, a factory in town. In 1880, George Pullman built a factory for manufacturing sleeper cars and other railroad cars in Illinois. The town nearby, Pullman, he built it for his employees and was modeled after early industrial European towns. Pullman's workers felt that the puritanical town was too strict, and when he lowered their wages but not rent, it led to a strike in 1894. So please write down that Pullman created a town for his employees, lowered their wages, and it led to a strike in 1894. Please write that down for question number 10. Credit Mobilier scandal. Stockholders of the Union Pacific Railroad formed a construction company in 1864. Stockholders then gave contracts to the company to lay 3 times the track at 3 times the actual cost, and then pocketed the difference. So basically what they were doing was they were ripping off the government. Number 11 is asking, who were the Grangers and what were Grange laws? That's on this slide here. Farmers were especially affected by the corruption in the railroad industry. So next to number 11, the Grangers, which is a farming organization. Write that down. They protested land deals, price fixing, and charging different rates to different customers. And then eventually they passed Grange laws, which were laws that were passed to protect the farmers. Please write down that Grange laws were passed to protect farmers. Because the railroad was affecting farmers so negatively, the government had to step in. And for number 12, it's asking, how did Congress react to the issues with the railroad? You can say that Congress passed the Interstate Commerce Act. And they did this to help control the abuses by the railroad. Please write that down as well for number 12.